The shadow of the Grax dreadnought Inevitable Conquest fell across Era's prime research station like an eclipse, plunging the Martian colony into premature darkness. Inside the station's command center, Dr. Elena Chen straightened her collar and exhaled slowly. Years of sinolinguistic theory were about to be put into practice, and humanity's future might well depend on this moment. "They're requesting permission to dock," Lieutenant Santos reported, his hand hovering over the airlock controls. "3 representatives only, as we negotiated." Chen nodded. "Grant permission. Let's make history." The representatives of the Grax Imperium did not so much enter the room as invaded. Leading the delegation was Commander Vexthor, nearly 7 feet of armored reptilian muscle. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed beneath his scales. Fret displays, Chen realized, drawing on her studies of Earth reptiles. "I am Commander Vexthor, 12th Brood of the Imperial Vanguard," he announced, translator device rendering his clicks and hisses into stilted English. "The Grax Imperium claims this system by right of superior civilization." Chen stepped forward, ignoring Santos' warning glance. "I am Dr. Elena Chen, representing Earth's United Scientific Coalition. We welcome peaceful contact, but recognize no claims upon our sovereign territory." The commander's inner eyelids flickered. Amusement or contempt, she couldn't tell. "Your species' recent ascension to rudimentary space travel does not constitute a territorial claim," Vexthor said. "We have observed your planet for decades. Your divisions, your inefficiency. You require proper management." Chen felt her diplomatic training strain against her rising temper. "Perhaps we could discuss cultural exchange rather than management." The commander's scales flushed crimson. "Cultural exchange, with primitives who have barely harnessed fusion. Your species has nothing to offer the Imperium." "We've developed quite a few technologies without outside assistance," Chen countered. "Our adaptability might surprise you." "Adaptability?" Vexthor spat the word as if it tasted foul. "The mark of an undisciplined mind. The Grax Imperium brings order, structure, and protection." "Protection from what, exactly?" Chen asked. "From this." Vexthor raised a taloned hand to his communication device. "The galaxy is filled with predators that would consume your world without hesitation. Perhaps a demonstration of what awaits unprotected species is in order." He clicked a command into his wrist device. "Release the beast." A low hum resonated through the chamber as a portal opened in the Graxian transport vessel. Fog spilled from the compartment, dramatically backlit by pulsing red lights. The human security team raised their weapons as something stirred in the mist. A small golden shape bounded forward, sliding on the polished floor before regaining its footing. Wide paws, floppy ears, and a frantically wagging tail became visible as the fog dissipated. "Woof," said the beast, its pink tongue lolling out as it looked excitedly around the room. The silence that followed was absolute. "That's a puppy," Chen said, fighting to keep her voice even. "Not a beast." The puppy, seemingly pleased to be the center of attention, pranced toward the Graxian commander and promptly piddled on his ceremonial boot. "What is this treachery?" Vexthor's voice had risen several octaves, his translator struggling to calibrate. Lieutenant Krizak, the commander's second, leaned toward his superior. "Sir, there appears to be a malfunction. The war beast containment and the biological sample storage share the same." Silence. Vexthor hissed, backing away from the approaching puppy as if it were radioactive. The golden retriever pup, undeterred, playfully pawed at the commander's leg, leaving tiny muddy prints on the immaculate armor. A snort escaped Chen's carefully maintained composure. Santos disguised his laugh as a cough. Within seconds, the entire human delegation was struggling to maintain diplomatic decorum. Vexthor's scales had turned almost completely white, a sign of extreme distress. Chen noted with professional interest and personal satisfaction. "You find this amusing?" The commander snarled. "You have not witnessed the true might of the Grax Imperium. This incident changes nothing." As if in direct contradiction, the puppy flopped onto its back at Vexthor's feet, exposing its belly for scratches. "This meeting is concluded," Commander Vexthor announced, dignity in tatters as he backed away from the still wriggling puppy. "You will remain in this facility until further notice." With a sharp gesture to his guards, the Graxian delegation retreated, the door hissing shut behind them. Chen waited 3 seconds before collapsing into her chair, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. "Well, that went terribly," Santos suggested. "Brilliantly," she corrected, reaching down to scoop up the puppy. "They've clearly never encountered a dog before. Their cultural intelligence is incomplete." Dr. James Wong, the team's xenolinguist, was already typing furiously on his tablet. "Did you see the commander's scale patterns? Classic threat display followed by confusion indicators. And his subordinate, Krizak, was it. Showed curiosity markers rather than aggression." "Fascinating observations," Chen replied dryly, "but they don't change the fact that we're effectively under house arrest by a technologically superior military force." The puppy squirmed in her arms, licking her chin enthusiastically. "What's his name?" Santos asked, reaching over to scratch behind the floppy ears. Chen examined the tag on the simple collar. "Buddy, property of Mark Wilson, Houston." She frowned. "They must have picked him up during their reconnaissance of Earth. Poor little guy." "Poor little security breach," Wong corrected. "If they were on Earth recently enough to accidentally acquire a puppy, what else do they know about us?" A sharp alarm cut through their conversation, a pulsing red light bathing the room. "What now?" Chen groaned. The station's AI responded. "Atmospheric anomaly detected in Section 3. Life support compensating." Santos moved to the monitoring station. "Something's moving through the ventilation system. Small, fast, heading toward the Graxian docking bay." Chen looked down at her empty arms. "Where's Buddy?" The realization hit them simultaneously. The puppy had slipped away unnoticed during their conversation. "Oh no," Wong whispered. Lieutenant Krizak prided himself on observational acuity. While Commander Vexthor raged about human deception and contamination protocols, Krizak's attention was focused on the small access panel near the floor, which was now vibrating slightly. "Incompetent spawning brood. How could our intelligence miss something so fundamental about their relationship with lesser species?" Vexthor continued, pacing the length of their temporary command post. The access panel popped open, and a golden head poked through, ears perked forward. Krizak froze, fascinated. The creature from Earth, the puppy, the human had called it, had followed them. According to protocol, he should raise an alarm immediately. Instead, he found himself crouching down, extending one clawed hand toward the small mammal. The puppy sniffed cautiously, then bounded forward with unexpected enthusiasm, nearly knocking Krizak off balance. Unlike Commander Vexthor, who had reacted with disgust, Krizak found the creature's warmth and soft fur pleasant. "What is this behavior?" he murmured as the puppy pressed against him, vibrating rhythmically. The translator offered no equivalent for the sound it was making. The ship's alarm suddenly blared, bathing the room in pulsing blue light. "Biological contaminant DTCTED, Lockdown, INITIED." Vexthor spun around, his gaze locking onto Krizak and the puppy. His scales flared to a deep crimson. "Explain this immediately," he hissed, each word dripping with barely contained fury. Before Krizak could respond, the puppy darted between Vexthor's legs and through the open doorway into the main corridor of the dreadnought. After it, Vexthor roared, "That creature is a human bioweapon." "Sir, I don't believe." "It infiltrated our secure area without triggering alarms until direct contact. It disarmed you with some form of chemical influence. The humans clearly deployed it as a reconnaissance device." Krizak wanted to argue but knew better. Once Commander Vexthor formed a conclusion, the facts became irrelevant. Instead, he saluted crisply and hurried after the puppy, hoping to capture it before trigger-happy security drones did. Behind him, he heard Vexthor contacting the bridge. Lock down the human delegation. They have attempted sabotage using a biological agent. Prepare dissection chamber 3. I want that creature analyzed down to its molecular structure. Krizak quickened his pace. Somehow, the thought of the small earth mammal being dissected filled him with an unfamiliar sensation, something uncomfortably close to what humans might call concern. This is a diplomatic outrage, Dr. Chen declared, facing the holographic projection of Commander Vexthor. Your accusations are baseless, and your threats unacceptable. Unacceptable. Vexthor's scales shifted to a mottled orange pattern. Your biological infiltrator has disabled 2 security drones and contaminated the ship's hydroponic system. Chen blinked. Buddy did all that. You admit your knowledge of this buddy designation. Vexthor jabbed a clawed finger at the projection sensor. Confess your espionage objectives. Wang leaned toward Chen. They think a 3-month-old puppy is a tactical infiltration unit, he whispered. Should we correct them or let them keep thinking we have super advanced biotech? Chen weighed her options. Commander, I'll cooperate fully if you allow one of my team to assist in capturing the agent. We have specialized control protocols. Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. Chen was learning to recognize this as his thinking gesture. 1 human, under armed guard. No communication devices. Agreed. Dr. Wang will assist you. As the hologram faded, Santos raised an eyebrow. Why Wang? Because he's the only one who bothered to study Graxian nonverbal communication patterns, Chen replied. And he has 3 dogs back on Earth. Wang followed the Graxian guards through the curving corridors of the dreadnought, marveling at the bioluminescent lighting and the strange, almost organic quality of the ship's interior. Despite his current predicament, the linguist in him couldn't help cataloging details for future analysis. Halt, ordered the lead guard as they approached the sealed doorway. Lieutenant Krizak will oversee your assistance in neutralizing the bioweapon. The door slid open to reveal the commander's second-in-command, his scales a subdued blue-green. Dr. Wang. Krizak acknowledged with a gesture that approximated a human nod. The situation has escalated. As they proceeded down a maintenance tunnel, Krizak fell back slightly. Your species maintains these puppies as companions, correct? Not weapons, he asked in a lowered voice. Wang carefully controlled his expression. That's right. They're domesticated canines, social animals that form bonds with humans. Fascinating. Entirely unlike our war beasts, which require chemical conditioning and neural implants for control. Krizak's head frills twitched. The commander is convinced this is an infiltration tactic. And you. I have reviewed your planetary broadcasts. I've seen these creatures in many contexts. None appeared to be military operations. Wang suppressed a smile. Just how many Earth transmissions have you studied, Lieutenant? Krizak's scales briefly flushed purple. Embarrassment, Wang guessed. Your entertainment programming is diverse. I find your situation comedies particularly informative. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant alarm. Krizak's communicator crackled with urgent reports. The creature has entered the primary life support chamber, he translated for Wang. And our sensors are detecting an anomaly in the ancient artifact storage. Wang frowned. Artifact storage. Retrieved from Deimos during our system survey. Dormant technology of unknown origin. A shudder ran through the ship, followed by a momentary flicker of the lights. That was not the puppy, Wang said with certainty. Krizak's scales paled. No, something else is moving within our ship. They rounded a corner to find 2 Graxian security officers sprawled on the deck, unconscious but breathing. Beyond them, a sealed door had been forced open, its locking mechanism melted into twisted metal. Life support is offline in sections 3 through 7, reported a voice over Krizak's communicator. Backup systems engage. Krizak drew his sidearm. The commander believed your puppy was our greatest concern. It appears we were all mistaken. A chilling sound echoed down the corridor, something between a hiss and a metallic scrape. Wang felt the hairs on his arms stand up. What exactly was in that artifact storage? He whispered. Containment vessels. One contained a stasis field, Krizak admitted. It appears to have failed. Something large moved in the shadows ahead, its form seeming to shift and blend with the darkness. Wang caught a glimpse of reflective eyes. Far too many eyes. Before the creature slithered back into the gloom. I believe, Krizak said with remarkable calm, that we have found a genuine beast. A happy bark echoed from somewhere nearby, followed by the sound of scampering paws. And it's hunting your puppy, Krizak added grimly. We have a security breach in artifact containment, Krizak reported over the ship-wide communication system. Unknown hostile entity, possibly precursor technology. All personnel implement containment protocol Sigma 9. Wang observed with interest as the Graxian crew responded with military precision, sealing bulkheads and readying weapons. Your commander should evacuate non-essential personnel, Wang suggested, including our delegation. Krizak's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. Commander Vexthor does not retreat. He will be arriving with the primary security detail shortly. A series of heavy thuds announced the arrival of Vexthor, and 6 heavily armored Graxians, each carrying what appeared to be energy weapons. Report, Lieutenant, Vexthor demanded, pointedly ignoring Wang. The Deimos artifact has released a predatory life form, Krizak explained. Adaptive camouflage, unknown biological composition. It has already disabled 2 security personnel. And the human bioweapon. The puppy is still at large, sir, and I believe the entity is hunting it. Vexthor's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Perhaps it recognizes a fellow weapon. He turned to Wang. Your infiltration unit may have served a purpose after all. It has flushed out a far more dangerous threat. A distant bark echoed through the corridors, followed by a metallic screech that made Wang's teeth ache. We need to find Buddy before that thing does, Wang said urgently. Agreed, Vexthor said, surprising everyone. The specimen must be preserved for proper analysis. Not exactly the reasoning Wang had hoped for, but it would do. Buddy will respond to human calls and commands. Let me help locate him. Vexthor considered, then nodded sharply. You will accompany the search team, human. Lieutenant, coordinate ship security and prepare the primary containment field. As they moved deeper into the ship's maintenance sections, Wang noticed the air growing colder, carrying a faint acrid scent. The lighting flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows across the curved walls. The entity appears to be affecting our ship's systems, muttered one of the Graxian security officers. Localized power fluctuations wherever it moves. Wang cupped his hands around his mouth. Buddy. Here, boy. A distant yip responded, followed by scrabbling sounds from an overhead vent shaft. There. Wang pointed upward as a small golden face peered through a ventilation grill, ears perked forward. The puppy gave an excited bark upon seeing Wang, pawing at the grill. I need to get up there, Wang said, already looking for handholds. Inefficient, declared the security officer, raising his weapon. Wait, Wang stepped in front of the weapon. You'll damage the shaft and maybe hurt the puppy. That is not a concern, the officer replied coldly. It should be, Wang countered. Buddy can sense the creature. He's been evading it successfully while your security personnel were incapacitated. He could help us track it. The Graxian hesitated, looking to his commander for direction. Vexthor's scales shifted to a contemplative gray. Proceed, human. But quickly. With the reluctant assistance of 2 security officers, Wang reached the vent and carefully removed the grill. Buddy practically leaped into his arms, a warm, wriggling bundle of fur that immediately began licking his face. Good boy, Wang murmured, checking the puppy for injuries. Finding none, he held Buddy out for the Graxians to see. Harmless, as we told you, but useful. Vexthor approached cautiously, studying the puppy with scientific detachment. How does this creature function without control implants? Trust and affection, Wong said simply. He forms bonds with those who treat him kindly. Before Vexthor could respond, the corridor lights failed completely. Emergency illumination bathed everything in an eerie blue glow as the ship's systems announced. Warning: primary power conduit breach in Section 6. A chilling sound, like metal being torn apart, echoed from the darkness ahead. Buddy's demeanor changed instantly. He growled, the sound surprisingly deep for such a small animal, his attention fixed on something in the shadows. He sees it, Wong whispered. Without warning, Buddy leaped from Wong's arms and charged into the darkness, barking fiercely. Buddy, no, Wong shouted, lunging after him. Multiple shadows detached from the walls. The creature was somehow in several places at once, or perhaps splitting itself into multiple forms. The security team opened fire, energy weapons illuminating the corridor in strobing flashes that revealed glimpses of writhing, mercurial shapes. Fall back, Vexthor ordered. Regroup at Junction 7. Wong ignored the command, pursuing Buddy into the chaos. I'm not leaving without him. Dr. Elena Chen paced the confines of the locked conference room, her patience wearing thin. The communication panel had gone dark 20 minutes ago, and the strange vibrations running through the station didn't bode well. Something's happening on that ship, she muttered. And Wong is right in the middle of it. Santos looked up from his attempt to bypass the door controls. If the commander wanted us dead, we would be. They must need Wong's help with something. A violent shudder ran through the station, followed by the groan of metal under stress. That's not good, Santos said, abandoning the door panel. The dreadnought's docking clamps are disengaging incorrectly. They could tear the station apart. The door suddenly slid open, revealing Lieutenant Krizak. His scales were an alarming shade of white, and what appeared to be burn marks scored his ceremonial armor. Dr. Chen, your assistance is required, he said without preamble. The situation has evolved. Wong dove beneath a tangle of conduits as a metallic tentacle slashed through the air where his head had been. The emergency lighting cast everything in disorienting shadows, but he could hear Buddy barking somewhere ahead. This was tremendously stupid, he muttered to himself, crawling forward. Galactic diplomacy undone by a golden retriever puppy. The ship groaned around him, systems failing as the entities, spread throughout the vessel's infrastructure. Wong had glimpsed enough to understand they weren't dealing with a single creature, but rather a colony of nanomechanical organisms that could combine and separate at will. Buddy, come, he called again, hoping the basic command training had stuck. A blur of gold burst from a side passage, Buddy running full tilt with his ears flattened against his head. Close behind, flowing across the ceiling like liquid mercury, came 3 of the entities. Wong scooped Buddy up without breaking stride, tucking the puppy under his arm as he sprinted toward what he hoped was the direction of the command center. Buddy trembled against him, but kept barking over Wong's shoulder, alerting him to the pursuers' positions. Rounding a corner, Wong collided with a solid mass of scales and armor. Commander Vexthor himself, accompanied by the rest of the security team. Containment has failed, Vexthor announced, steadying Wong with surprising gentleness. The entities are multiplying. They appear to be consuming ship systems for replication. They're avoiding the puppy, Wong gasped, trying to catch his breath. Chasing, but not attacking directly, almost like they're curious. Vexthor's head tilted, his alien features unreadable. Explain. The entities are adaptive, right? Learning as they go. Maybe they've never encountered Earth life before. A security officer interrupted with urgent news. Commander, the entities have breached the engine cooling systems. Core temperature rising beyond safe parameters. Evacuate all personnel to auxiliary craft, Vexthor ordered. Prepare for emergency separation from the human station. Sir, the primary docking clamps are malfunctioning, reported another officer. A standard disconnect would damage the human structure. Vexthor's scales darkened. Unfortunate, but acceptable losses. Wait, Wong interjected. The entities are attracted to energy signatures, right? That's why they went for your power conduits first. Correct, Vexthor confirmed. They appear to feed on energy. Wong held up Buddy, who had finally stopped trembling and was now watching the proceedings with typical puppy curiosity. What if we use that? Create a focused energy signature to draw them away from critical systems. To what purpose? Vexthor demanded. The ship is lost. Not if we can contain them in one section and then vent that section to space. Hard vacuum should neutralize them. Lieutenant Krizak arrived with Dr. Chen and Santos in Tau in time to hear Wong's suggestion. It could work, Krizak said, but we would need to precisely coordinate the energy signature and venting sequence, and someone would need to manually activate the emergency bulkheads, Vexthor added. A suicide mission. A moment of silence fell over the group, broken only by Buddy's sudden enthusiastic bark as he spotted Chen. Chen studied the puppy, then glanced at the worried faces, human and alien, around her. A slow smile spread across her face. Not necessarily suicide, she said. I think our buddy here just gave me an idea. This is utterly preposterous, Commander Vexthor declared, staring at the modified collar now adorning Buddy's neck. The device glowed with a soft blue light, incorporating Graxian technology alongside Dr. Chen's hasty modifications. Preposterous, but theoretically sound, Chen replied, making final adjustments to the small power cell. The entities are attracted to energy signatures but repelled by organic neural patterns. Buddy's brain activity creates a unique electromagnetic field that confuses them. And you discovered this. How? Vexthor demanded. Your own scanner data. Chen nodded toward Krizak. Your lieutenant has been monitoring the entity's reactions to different stimuli. They chase Buddy, but never actually touch him. Krizak's scales flushed slightly. The observation is correct, Commander. The entities maintain a consistent distance from the Earth creature despite clear pursuit behavior. The ship shuddered violently, emergency klaxons blaring through every corridor. Core temperature critical, announced the ship's eye. Catastrophic failure in 12 minutes. We're out of options, Santos said grimly. This plan is all we've got. Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered rapidly before he gave a curt nod. Proceed. The plan was as elegant as it was desperate. The modified collar would amplify Buddy's neural signature while simultaneously emitting a focused energy pulse. Irresistible bait for the entities. Wong would guide Buddy through the maintenance tunnels to the designated containment area, drawing the entities away from critical systems. Once they were concentrated, Chen and Santos would activate the emergency bulkheads from a secondary control station, while Krizak prepared the section for space exposure. Ready? Chen asked, scratching Buddy behind the ears. Wong took a deep breath and picked up the puppy. As I'll ever be. Your sacrifice will be remembered, Vexthor said solemnly. Wong blinked. It's not a suicide mission. We'll be in the adjacent section when the bulkheads close. Of course, Vexthor replied, not quite meeting Wong's eyes. Chen caught the exchange and pulled Wong aside. The commander doesn't think you'll make it to the extraction point in time, she whispered. The entities are faster than they're admitting. Then why? Because we're out of alternatives. Chen pressed something into his hand, a small device with a single button. Emergency teleporter. Experimental and highly unstable, but if you're caught between sections, press this. It should transport you and Buddy to the marker I've placed in Corridor 7. Should. 73% probability. Wong pocketed the device. Better odds than we started with. The maintenance tunnels were eerily silent save for the hum of failing systems and Buddy's panting. Wong crawled through the narrow passage, guiding the puppy ahead of him toward the designated containment area. Almost there, Buddy, he whispered. Just a little further. The collar emitted a soft pulse, right on schedule. Within seconds, Wang heard the now familiar metallic rustle of the entities responding to the signal. They flowed through the ship's infrastructure like quicksilver, converging on the tantalizing energy source. "That's it," Wang murmured as shadowy tendrils began to appear at the edges of his light. "Follow the bouncing puppy." The plan worked almost too well. Entities poured from every conduit and junction, a flood of metallic liquid forming into ever more complex shapes. Wang quickened his pace, pushing Buddy ahead as the tunnel began to fill behind them. "Core breach imminent," warned the ship's eye. 9 minutes to critical failure. They reached the junction leading to the containment area, a large cargo bay that could be isolated and vented to space. Wang urged Buddy forward, but the puppy suddenly froze, hackles raised. "What is it?" Wang looked ahead and felt his blood run cold. Blocking their path was a massive amalgamation of entities, formed into something resembling a spidery sentinel. Unlike the mindless pursuers behind them, this construct appeared deliberate, intelligent, and waiting. "Chen," Wang whispered into his communicator, "we have a problem." "The bulkheads are ready," she replied. "What's wrong?" "They've evolved. They've figured out the trap." The sentinel shifted, revealing an opening in its center, a passage forward, but one that would require Wang and Buddy to travel through the very heart of the entity swarm. "They're hurting us," Wang realized. "They want to study us up close." Behind them, the pursuing entities had sealed off any retreat. Ahead, the sentinel waited, its passage the only way forward. "Time for Plan B," Wang muttered, reaching for Chen's device. His fingers closed around empty fabric. The teleporter was gone, likely fallen out during their crawl. Buddy whined softly, looking up at Wang with trusting eyes. "Core breach in 7 minutes, announced the AI. Wang made his decision. "Hold on, Buddy," he whispered, gathering the puppy into his arms. "We're going through." Wang stepped forward, clutching Buddy tightly against his chest. The sentinel entity parted like a liquid curtain, forming a tunnel of shifting metallic surfaces. As they entered, Wang felt a strange tingling sensation across his skin. The entities were scanning them, learning, adapting. "Chen, do you read me?" He whispered into his communicator. Only static responded. Buddy remained unnaturally calm, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns surrounding them. The puppy's heartbeat, quick but steady, pulsed against Wang's hands. "Core breach in 6 minutes, the AI announced, its voice distorted through the entity-filled passage. They emerged into the cargo bay, their intended destination, but Wang immediately sensed something was wrong. The entities had completely overtaken the space, covering every surface in a shimmering metallic film. At the center of the bay floated a complex structure that pulsed with stolen energy, tendrils extending outward like a grotesque heart with arteries. "They've built something," Wang murmured. "Some kind of central processor." The sentinel reformed behind them, sealing off the exit. Wang was trapped with Buddy in the heart of the entity swarm, surrounded by increasingly intelligent machines that seemed to be studying them with cold curiosity. "We've lost contact with Wang," Chen reported, frantically adjusting the communication array. "The entities are blocking the signal." Commander Vexthor's scales had darkened to a deep blue, a color Chen hadn't seen before. "Your plan has failed, human. We must evacuate immediately." "Not without Wang and Buddy," Chen insisted. "The ship will be destroyed in minutes. Your sentimentality condemns us all." Lieutenant Krizak, who had been studying the ship's internal sensors, suddenly straightened. "Commander, the entity concentration in Cargo Bay 3 has reached critical density. They've abandoned the engine core sections." "Impossible," Vexthor hissed. "Why would they?" "The puppy," Krizak realized. "They're more interested in the Earth creature than the ship's energy." Chen's eyes widened. "They're learning, evolving. Organics are more complex than technology. They're studying Buddy's neural patterns." "Core breach in 4 minutes, warned the AI. "We can still execute the original plan," Santos said. Seal and vent cargo bay 3. Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered. With your companion inside. There must be another way, Chen argued. There is not, Vexthor said with finality. Lieutenant, prepare for emergency venting of cargo bay 3. Wang set Buddy down on a small clear patch of flooring. The entities had maintained a consistent distance from the puppy, forming a perfect circle around him. The collar continued pulsing, but now the entities seemed to be responding with pulses of their own. Communication attempts. You're trying to understand him, aren't you? Wang said aloud, not expecting a response. To his shock, the central structure pulsed in a distinct pattern. 3 flashes, pause, 3 flashes. You can understand me. 2 flashes. Yes or no. 1 flash for yes, 2 for no. 1 flash. Wang's scientific mind raced with implications. You're not trying to destroy the ship. You're trying to learn. 1 flash. But you're killing the ship in the process. Your energy consumption is causing a core breach. The structure pulsed irregularly, as if processing this information. Then, slowly, tendrils began withdrawing from the ship's systems visible within the cargo bay walls. Buddy, apparently bored with sitting still, wandered toward the central structure. Wang tensed, ready to dive after him. But the entities made no move to harm the puppy. Instead, the structure lowered a tendril that stopped just short of Buddy's nose. The puppy sniffed it curiously, then gave it a friendly lick. The entire entity swarm rippled as if in shock. Core breach averted, announced the ship's AI suddenly. Engine temperature stabilizing. Wang's communicator crackled to life. Wang, are you there? Chen's voice was thick with relief. I'm here, he replied. And you're not going to believe this, but I think Buddy just made first contact. On the bridge, Commander Vexthor watched in astonishment as ship systems returned to normal functioning. The entity swarm had not only ceased its destructive consumption, but appeared to be repairing damaged sections. Impossible, he murmured. Not impossible, Krizak corrected gently. Simply unexpected. Like a small Earth creature infiltrating our most advanced warship. For the first time in his distinguished military career, Commander Vexthor laughed, a strange, hissing sound that startled his crew. Perhaps, he admitted, we have something to learn from these humans, and their companions after all. 1 month after the entity incident, the observation deck of the Eris Prime Station hummed with activity. Representatives from Earth's United Scientific Coalition mingled with a delegation from the Grax Imperium High Command, an unprecedented diplomatic gathering that would have been unthinkable mere weeks earlier. Dr. Elena Chen surveyed the scene with quiet satisfaction. The negotiations had proceeded remarkably smoothly once the Graxian High Command reviewed the full records of what their scientists now called the Sentinel event. Instead of war, both species were discussing technological exchange, shared defense protocols, and most surprisingly, a joint study of the entity swarm, which had requested permission to establish a research outpost on Mars' smaller moon, Phobos. Quite a change from our first meeting, Commander Vexthor noted, appearing at Chen's side. His ceremonial armor gleamed, but he wore it more casually now, his posture less rigid. Amazing what almost dying together can accomplish, Chen replied with a wry smile. Indeed. Vexthor's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. Our xenobiologists have been studying the data from your buddy extensively. The concept of companion species evolving alongside sentient life is unexpected. The Grax have always viewed other life forms as resources to be controlled or threats to be eliminated. And now, Vexthor's gaze drifted to the center of the room, where Dr. Wang sat cross-legged on the floor. Around him, 3 young Graxian scientists were attempting to teach Buddy to perform a complex series of movements for a treat. The puppy, now slightly larger and more coordinated, was making a valiant effort, much to the delight of his audience. Now we find ourselves reconsidering fundamental assumptions, Vexthor admitted. Lieutenant Krizak approached, carrying a datapad. The High Command has approved the Companion Species Cultural Exchange Program, he reported, unable to contain his excitement. 20 Graxian scientists will visit Earth to study human-animal partnerships, and Earth has agreed to send animal behavior specialists to our homeworld. With suitable companions? Vexthor inquired. Yes, Commander. The Earth delegation has selected several species they believe would adapt well to our environmental conditions, primarily canines, but also some felines and avian species. Shen raised an eyebrow. You're getting birds too. Your parrots have cognitive capabilities our scientists find particularly intriguing, Krizak explained. The concept of non-sentient species learning to mimic and potentially understand language is revolutionary to our biological paradigms. A commotion near the viewport drew their attention. The entity's swarm representatives, housed in a specially designed containment field that allowed them to maintain their preferred Mercury-like state, were presenting their communication findings to the assembled scientists. Over the past weeks, they had developed increasingly sophisticated methods of interaction, progressing from simple light pulses to complex holographic displays. They're requesting permission to study Earth directly, Santos reported, joining the group. Specifically, they want to observe the diversity of relationships between humans and companion species. Approved, Chen and Vexthor said simultaneously, then exchanged surprised glances. With appropriate safeguards, Vexthor added. Of course, Chen agreed. Wang approached, Buddy trotting happily at his heels. The entities have made another request, he said, scratching the puppy behind the ears. They want to know if they can have a companion species of their own. That's unprecedented, Chen stammered. What kind of companion could possibly work with sentient nanomachines? They've been studying Earth's marine biology databases, Wang explained. Apparently, they're fascinated by symbiotically minded species like remoras and cleaner wrasses. Vexthor's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. His thinking gesture had become familiar to the humans now. Impossible to predict the outcomes of such an arrangement. Like a reptilian commander befriending a small mammal, Wang suggested innocently. As if on cue, Buddy bounded over to Vexthor and sat expectantly at his feet, tail sweeping the polished floor. After a moment's hesitation, the commander reached down with one clawed hand and awkwardly patted the puppy's head. Buddy's tail wagging intensified. Perhaps, Vexthor conceded with what might have been the Graxian equivalent of a smile. Impossible is merely a matter of perspective. Chen glanced out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, countless other species waited to be discovered, some friendly, some hostile, all with their own perspectives and adaptations. She couldn't help but smile at the thought that humanity's first significant contribution to galactic diplomacy had come not from their weapons or technology, but from a golden retriever puppy who had taught 3 different species the power of connection. Not a beast after all, she murmured, just a very good boy.